Cuff podcast.
And it's a little bit of a rainy day here today, but I think it's a great day for our department and public safety. I think every day it's a great day to be safe over VTPD campus. What do you think, Carter?
I agree. I think it's supposed to get warmer today. For the next couple days. So we should be okay.
What I was thinking about this morning? You want to hear the thoughts of MJ?
I do. I really do want to hear the thoughts. Okay.
Sometimes I do this job and I get frustrated with people's behavior. It's like, man, how can these people act like this? And you see other people making bad decisions and mistakes. But what I try and remember is that every day, thousands and thousands of students, faculty, staff that come here, doing the right thing, being responsible, being good people, doing some awesome, learning, research, all this great stuff. And I just never see them, I don't have any reason to try and get out in the community as much as I can, but I'm always interacting with people who make mistakes. And so I try and remind myself, there's a lot of great people out here doing the right thing. Just try to remember that.
Well, I know that's like the Residence Life Resource Officer program that we have. I find that if you're having a bad day, if you just get in your car, drive over to a res hall or an academic building and just walk the building, not because you're going there to investigate, call for service or to talk to witnesses or suspects, but just to walk the building and talk to students or talk to faculty, staff, you'll get a plethora of enjoyment out of it. Plus, you'll meet people and they'll know you and things like that. So I strongly suggest maybe we'll do that. All right, so we're going out to University City Boulevard, where the Community Service Board has an office. They have one in Radford City, and they have probably other satellite ones. So we're going out today to pick up Patrick Halpern and Joey Thacker. And both these gentlemen, they help train police officers, sheriff's deputies, clinicians, a plethora of people on crisis intervention team training. And they also manage the co-responder program for the NRV.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to talk about the co-responder program. I think that's relatively new to directly our area, Montgomery County, but so far there's been some growing pains, working some stuff out, but overall I've just heard great things from the community about the co-responder program. So anyway, I decided to talk to them about that. Go too deep into it, but I think it's been good. We're doubling up the guests today. Two great guests. Who do we got today?
We have the Joey Thacker and the Patrick Halpern.
Representing NRVCS. We're going to have some great conversation here. We're going to hit the road.
It's like you've actually driven this thing before.
A plethora of times.
I'm once again disappointed that the pony is not joining us for this.
If I get a ramp for that thing, that pony will be up in here.
Because nothing says photo op better than a pony at Carroll Lee with Virginia Tech Police
I'm
Department.
surprised y'all have not invited us to come to your center there. Are ponies allowed in the building? Could you research that?
If you have papers that indicate the pony is a certified service animal, we could bring the
papers.
If you have papers, sir, do you have your papers?
We do not present papers. What kind of government institution is this? All right, so we're going down UCB. We were going to go down to Plantation Road, but you have inspired us, Patrick, for the Carroll Lee Donuts, which we will be purchasing. I hope you brought a couple dollars with you.
It's going to be great.
Tell you what, fellas, I'll treat.
I was joking.
My treat today.
You're our guest. Michael Johnson will treat.
Yeah.
All right. So the reason why we asked you on the show, both of you have been on the former Rollo Nation radio show.
I'm sad to hear that it is former, but yes.
Former. So Patrick, tell us a little bit about yourself. I met you, I think, in 09-ish, somewhere around in there. Well, what do you do now? A lot of people want to know that answer. What do you do now?
I'm just a guy who works at New River Valley Community Services. My title is CIT coordinator. I coordinate the New River Valley Crisis Intervention Team. Your viewers know that as CIT. And I've been involved in the New River Valley CIT program for, quite a while. I don't know, since 2007.
Now, with CIT, you started off training just police officers, sheriff's deputy, law enforcement, but you have branched out, have you not?
That's true. You know, we train all sorts of responders and criminal justice professionals that often find themselves involved in a crisis response. So that could include, these days we train probation officers, corrections officers, emergency services clinicians. We've been training private security now, who are being supported by the Commonwealth of Virginia to help relieve local law enforcement from their custody obligations during the emergency custody process when someone finds themselves in crisis. And so, yeah, CIT has definitely expanded in terms of both service interventions and the folks we find ourselves working with in training.
What year did you get involved with CIT?
2007.
7. So what did you do before that? You like Michael MJ? We call him MJ. Michael Johnson, MJ. He worked at a food truck at Michigan Tech's campus. What did you do before CIT?
You snickered when you said that. I'd like to hear more about, do you not value the work of people who are working in food trucks?
No, I'm envious because that's what I always, when I retire, I'm going to work at a food truck, and he's already done that.
I mean, we find ourselves in a truck right now.
That's true.
And we could sling food out of it.
We've done a hot dog sale for Special Olympics out of this truck before.
I'd like to see more of that.
So, seriously, what did you do before you were worked at community? Now, I'm from Newport News. We call ours Community Service Board.
Yeah, we dropped the board.
Dropped the board.
But
So-
we are a community services board.
Yeah. So, what did you do before?
So before I came to New River Valley Community Services, I was the executive director of the Mental Health Association in the New River Valley. I started working with the Mental Health Association as the associate director in March of 2007. And at that time, the Mental Health Association was sort of the administrative hub or administrative coordinator for the local CIT program. And so that's, how I got involved in CIT. 2014, came to New River Valley Community Services just to do CIT full time. And that was a really good thing for me personally, and I think for our CIT program generally, to kind of fully integrate the CIT program within one agency has been really useful and valuable.
Are you from Blacksburg, I take it? Grow up here, go to high school here? Tell us.
In fact, no, I'm married into townie status. My wife was born and raised in Blacksburg, but I was born in California.
That explains a lot.
I lived there for 2 weeks.
That explains a lot.
So you can only take that so far.
We are going to pivot, transition to the back, so that we can do our next part.
All right, so we moved to the back here. So I guess, just to start things off with the listening audience, what is NRVCS? What's the Community Services Board? What do you guys do? Go ahead, you got it.
So NRVCS is the public provider of behavioral health services for the New River Valley. When we say behavioral health, we mean both, folks who might need assistance with a mental health issue or disorder, or a substance use issue or disorder. So the Commonwealth Community Service Board system was founded in 1965, and our agency was founded shortly thereafter.
65 was an awesome year to be born. I'm just saying that, So have we told our listening audience of 2 or 3 who this person is? The Joey Thacker, the first fan of the former Rollo Nation radio show.
That is true.
Been on the show a bunch of times. So tell us who you are, a little bit about you.
My name's Joey. I am the co-response coordinator and law enforcement liaison with NRVCS. And basically what I do daily is talk with police departments to make sure things are running smoothly. That's the law enforcement liaison part. And then the co-response part is a new program we have in the New River Valley that started in July that pairs clinicians and police officers together to answer calls for mental health calls for service.
Awesome. And so I've been talking to people in the community, and so far I've heard great things about the co-response program. So I guess a little bit about that. You know, we have our police officers who've got some training, but something that I was impressed by, these clinicians that go out, we just kind of just toss them in the police car, right? You know, no training, no nothing.
No, there's actually, they go through a good amount of training. Just on our side, they have to become pre-screened. They have to be trained to do pre-screens for like ECOs. And they also have to be licensed eligible clinicians, which means they have a master's degree in certain fields that they can get their license in. And then once they go through all that, we put them in with Blacksburg Police Department actually, and they do some training for law enforcement things. And then we also have them ride along with the different departments. And so they get about, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for them it's a lot. It's about a month's worth of just police training, and then mixed in with the pre-screen and of course the 6 years they spend in college.
Right. Yeah.
And so ECO, emergency custody order, for the audience, that's like someone is taken into a form of custody, so they must get some help, and that's important and necessary in a lot of cases. But something I've noticed is that since this program started, there's just been a huge increase in the way that law enforcement and NRVCS is able to handle calls without an emergency custody order. And again, it's a fine tool. It's okay. It's necessary in some cases, but it's just maybe not the greatest solution all the time. And people don't really want to be taken into emergency custody. So I've just been really impressed by that. And what's the team done to kind of look for other solutions?
Well, before that, we have a stat. I think the most impressive stat of co-response was from July until the end of the year, we had a 10.5% rate of ECOs for the calls for service. And that's just mental health calls. So generally speaking, if I were to throw out an average, I would say 75% of the calls that we used to go on in law enforcement that would require, dealing with someone who had a mental health issue, probably 75% of them were going to get ECO'd, and we've backed that all the way down to about 10.5%. So that's, to me, probably the most impressive stat that we have so far with co-response. But the things we have in our community between the crisis center, which is the big one, that's the one we refer to the most, which is in Radford. That, and sometimes people we're able to release them on what's called a safety plan, where we were able to de-escalate them enough that they didn't need to go seek professional service right then and there. They could wait till the next time maybe they go see a therapist or something like that.
And something I've been seeing pop up a lot in notes that it just seems like it's being more utilized or coming to my attention more as a mobile crisis unit team or crisis.
Crisis team.
Okay. Yeah. What's that?
Mobile crisis is a behavioral health service intervention, whereas the program Joey has talked about is co-response, where we pair law enforcement with a clinician. In some situations, we recognize that we don't need, there aren't really extreme or even any safety considerations. I mean, there's always going to be safety considerations, but people who qualify for mobile crisis are people who likely do not have a plan. They certainly don't have any means to carry out a plan to hurt themselves or someone else. And so it is really is the least restrictive mobile service that we can provide to people in crisis. And so, in general, a couple of points to be made when we are responding to people in crisis. If we can reduce the number of people on scene, that's going to be great for someone in crisis. And so that's what mobile crisis is really about. It's typically one or two clinicians going to someone where they are. So it could be at a residence hall, it could be in the community somewhere else. And so their job is to quickly stabilize people If they need a higher level of care, point them in that direction. But really to keep people stable and in the community setting. Something you mentioned a few minutes ago, MJ, I think is really important to reiterate. We are seeing a reduction in emergency custody orders for folks that come into contact with the co-response team. And you sort of alluded to this, when people can seek assistance on their own voluntarily, they're going to be more invested in that outcome and maybe doing the work that might be required to get stabilized, get well, and live a healthier life. So the greatest extent that we can pursue those least restrictive alternatives that give people that option and choice to pursue treatment, I think we see better clinical outcomes in the end. Hopefully reduce the need for another call for service, and they know where to go to get that help. So it's been a really valuable part of co-response and everything we do at NRVCS to try and utilize voluntary options to the greatest extent we can.
Right. And I know everybody in law enforcement, everybody in the department, no one really wants to take anybody into emergency custody. We don't want to put anybody in custody who hasn't done anything wrong. And people who are in a mental health crisis, they haven't done anything wrong. We don't want to put anybody in handcuffs so we don't have to. So I think across the department, everybody's been really happy with that change, and it's been good. So you guys have the awesome, jacket and shirt on here, the CIT. We were talking on the way over, we have all of our officers at Virginia Tech Police go through the CIT training, and that's been always a huge priority for Chief Bab, Manager Haga. It's like, when you get out, you can't get out of field training without at least having it signed up. So what does that training look like? And that's all police in the New River Valley. I know every department makes a big effort to go to, but definitely Virginia Tech, you got to go as soon as you're out of the academy, you get that scheduled. So what's that training like for officers?
Well, it's a 40-hour course, so we do it in 5 8-hour days. The first couple of days, we go over a lot of clinical things. We teach a lot about mental health and de-escalation and how to approach someone and talk to someone and deal with someone who is going through a mental health crisis. And then towards the end, we do a lot of role plays, and I think that's probably the most beneficial part. We have a pretty good cadre of instructors who go through the CIT instructor course who we use as role players. I will admit that's not my strong suit. I'm better at getting up in front of people and teaching the class, but Officer Tarter over here is probably one of our best role players, if I'm being honest.
I think Patrick, he has me just by a hair.
Patrick's really good too.
He's very good.
Patrick's
very
really
good.
good too.
See what you did there.
And the role plays are progressive, so they start out, we crawl, walk, run type of thought process, and I think that's what the officers get the most out of in CIT training. Is the role plays.
I know your guys' programming kind of changes over the years, but I got a lot out of the role playing when I went through. But one that just stuck with me is I had the opportunity with the class to go to a residential treatment program for people with substance use problems who are working through those problems. And it was voluntary. People didn't want to talk to us, didn't have to. They went somewhere else. But some of them wanted to talk to law enforcement, and it was a really big eye-opening experience for me to just sit down with some people that maybe out on the street it might be an adversarial kind of conflict when I come into contact with these people, like, okay, they're going to get in trouble, and just talk to them as people and just see what's going on with their life, what was their contact with law enforcement like. Some people had some negative experiences, like, I really just didn't appreciate how I was treated, and it was eye-opening to get that we're on the same team kind of conversation where you're charged with a crime, you're going through court, but maybe there's something we can do to work together and get you some help. And it's just like hard to get those conversations in any other context. That just stuck with me. I did this years and years ago, and I still remember that.
I think for CIT for me was getting officers to slow down a little bit and just have patience, and not that officers don't have patience, and to develop relationships as best you can, because you're probably gonna you might deal with that person again. The co-responder program, I think, is great for that, because you have the ability to make relationships, and then you might see that person again on another call for service, or just in the parking lot at Food Lion kind of thing. The co-responder program, I know that I talked to one of them that few months ago. She'd come from, I think, Oklahoma, and she was talking about they have 3 people riding in the vehicle. They also have a fire medic that rides with that, and I thought that was amazing. I think it's great where we're at now, but what are the benefits to having a medical staff member in that vehicle as well?
A lot of times, I think the stigma of law enforcement officials when they're dealing with people who are going through a mental health crisis, stigma for the public, seeing someone interacting with law enforcement, they automatically think they're in trouble. Right. People don't understand that maybe there's a different reason why we're dealing with people. And if you can put someone out there who, A, our clinicians are in regular clothes, right. That helps a lot to reduce some stigma. And B, if you were to be able to put someone out there who is maybe an EMT or something like that, A, they can check them out medically to make sure they're okay, and B, it just reduces the law enforcement interaction, which ultimately is the goal of Marcus Alert, the legislation that created co-response, was to reduce law enforcement involvement in the mental health systems.
Patrick, does every locality have to have a co-responder?
When the law was amended in 2021, when it was originally written the year prior, it had said that every locality would establish a Marcus Alert system. And so what the Marcus Alert system requires is a specialized crisis response model for communities. In 2021, they came back and amended the legislation to say that only those communities greater than 40,000 in population size would have to implement the program. And so the way the code currently is written, by 2028, all communities above 40,000 in population size will have to implement the system. Now, it's a little more nuanced than that. Some communities could say our specialized crisis response model is using CIT trained officers, and they leave it at that. Would they meet their code obligation? Yes. Would they meet the spirit of the code? Not necessarily. So what the state would like to see is some sort of collaborative crisis response model. So some communities, co-response is just fire, EMS, and a clinician. Most co-response teams across the Commonwealth typically are law enforcement and a clinician minimally. Some utilize EMS as a third member of that team. Some are utilizing peers. So that would be someone with lived behavioral health experience that can provide that more lived, compassionate response. I've walked a mile in your shoes. I've had law enforcement come to my house. I know what you're going through, type of thing.
It's so most of the NRV has it. I know the 4 localities in Montgomery County have it.
That's generally the extent of dedicated co-response teams in the New River Valley.
So you know that so an officer that has a co-responder, a clinician with them, they're working a 12-hour shift just like they are in the same rotation. So in Montgomery County, I would imagine since there's 4 rotations, you have a co-responder team for each rotation. So you try to provide enough coverage, but if not, then who responds to these calls?
So the backup option, if our co-response teams are not working at the time, is a CIT trained officer. And that, again, that's in some cases, some communities, that's all that would be anyway. But luckily we are able to provide 7-day coverage with about 14 hours a day of having co-response teams available. So in those off times, mainly early morning hours to mid-morning hours is when we don't have co-response working. Then you would have a CIT trained officer respond. But we've also done a lot of analysis when it comes to when we get those calls for service, and that's when we put our clinicians working, is to cover the majority of the time when those calls for services generally come out.
Can our audience, can they get connected with you guys and take advantage of your services even though they're at Tech and have Cook? Is that something still available to them?
Yes. If they want to get involved with NRVCS, there's 100 different ways. We're a huge organization, way bigger than what I ever even knew working in law enforcement in this area. But I'll tell you that if someone is going through crisis right now, the best way to get into NRVCS's care is through the crisis center. I say it all the time. It's probably one of the best things you have available to the public as a community service board. So that's probably, if you're in crisis right now and you're voluntary, that's the best way to get service. Now, if the student or faculty member doesn't have a ride over to Radford, because it's in Radford, in our building over there, then they can call co-response, and maybe co-response, when they're available, can bring them over there. There's other ways of getting people, rides over to the crisis center.
Yeah, so in terms of accessing NRVCS services, you would want to call 961-8400. That's 961-8400. And that is our kind of direct line for accessing services. So whether it was getting hooked up with same-day access, which is essentially like going and talking to a counselor, or if you need psychiatric services, like seeing a psychiatrist and having meds prescribed, or even, as Joey mentioned, if you wanted to visit the crisis center, call 961-8400, and that is our kind of direct 24-hour hotline. It's about access to care. The other way you access services is through 988. And it's just like it sounds like for 911, it's dialing 988. And that is essentially the emergent line for anyone with a behavioral health crisis. Virginia was one of the first 2 states in the nation to implement 988. And it uses regional crisis call centers and hooks people up to immediate crisis care. It's one of the methods that people can get mobile crisis response. And it is formerly the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and so they just have re-credentialed it as 988. Still provides that same service, a Suicide Prevention Lifeline, as well as immediate triage of crisis and trying to figure out how your needs can best be met.
So it's not going to the 911 center. The 988 is going to a special center.
That's correct, and that's an important distinction and designation. This is a HIPAA protected service, so if you call that number and you are presenting behavioral health needs, that is a protected service by HIPAA, which means that your information must be kept confidential and anonymous, unless you make an indication that you are going to harm yourself or harm someone else, in which case it is mandated by code to notify law enforcement about that issue.
Well, let me ask you a personal question, Joey. You came to work with Patrick. Did he require that, number one, you be his personal driver while at work, and 2, that you had to grow a beard similar to his?
So actually, Patrick drives me around just about everywhere. I don't know why it's turned out that way, but we take his car just about everywhere we go.
Hope you're listening, Cedric.
Yeah. There's a joke about how bad Patrick drives. It's really not all that bad. But
it's one time in Chicago.
And I have been waiting to grow this beard since it would have been all brown instead of all gray. So as soon as I had the chance, it just had to come out.
But law enforcement now, used to be you couldn't have a beard. You couldn't have tattoos, things like that. But now you're allowed to have beards.
I've never worked in a department that allowed beards. Yeah. Never.
Well, we're hiring.
Yeah,
we're hiring. Not to take you away from Patrick, but
in the CIT classroom, I say there's no recruiting. Can we extend the same mantra?
When did you become a law enforcement professional?
So I started law enforcement in 2002 in Waynesboro, the City of Waynesboro Police Department. From there, I went to the City of Stanton Police Department, which is also the area I grew up in. From there, I went to the University of Virginia Police Department. And then from there, I taught at the Department of Corrections for a couple years before coming down to the New River Valley, where I worked for Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. And then had the ability and the luck to work with the academy, the New River Criminal Justice Training Academy there in Dublin, where I'm also a part-time police officer at Dublin, and now I work with New River Community Services as the co-response coordinator and law enforcement liaison. So I've gone just about everywhere you can go.
In Virginia.
In Virginia.
You haven't expanded outside.
No, I haven't left Virginia. It's
An
the only place I'm
excellent-
certified.
Excellent variety.
Oh, what kind of places have you worked other than law enforcement? What kind of jobs?
Wow, that's a good question. Food service was never my thing. That's where I started, and I stayed in that for about 6 months.
Cooking, waitering.
Oh yeah,
busboy?
cooking, busboy. My brother is a chef, so he got that bug. But I ended up going into retail. So TJ Maxx, if you ever need to know the ins and outs of shopping at TJ Maxx, I can help you there. And then I sold shoes for a while, like Al Bundy, actually for a long time. And then I got into police work.
Like a department store shoe person?
No, it was like a athletic specialty. So I was like, I'm a runner, so I sold running shoes,
Oh, gotcha.
stuff like that.
Yeah. What? So, what are your hobbies?
Gosh, I have a daughter, so she's probably my biggest hobby, the thing that takes most of my time these days. But oddly enough, I collect watches.
That's right.
A lot of people find that weird, but I have a lot of watches.
Is that because you're late for a lot of things?
Usually, yeah, yeah. Which might be why I have trouble holding down a job. I don't know. Maybe that might be part of my problem.
Now, these watches, do you wear many of them?
All of them. I probably have 100, maybe a little over that. I've worn all of them at least 10 times. Some of them I wear all the time.
So, you know, I used to be a runner. You can't tell now, but I wasn't as serious about it as you are probably, but ran some half marathons. Have you ran a marathon or half
Just
marathons?
halves. I like the distance, 13.1 miles. And the only one I've ever run is the Hokie half.
Really?
Yeah, I love that race. I didn't do it the last 2 years, but I'm starting to. I took a little bit of a break. I took a month off, but now I'm going back to training for it. Training is a long process for that kind of mileage. At least it is for me. I'm getting kind of old now, so.
I'm hoping to get back into it as well. The listening audience might hear an after race report. Looking to get back to a 50K.
Oh
Hey,
wow,
50K.
50K. That's
You ran 50 miles
50
at one
kilometers.
time? Oh, 50
Big
kilometers.
difference.
Okay.
I'll
Still
tell.
a
Well, how many miles are in a kilometer?
All I know is that 50K works out to, I think it's 31 miles.
31
So it's not
miles
much more than that.
at one
Basically-
time.
Yeah, it's basically like a slightly longer marathon.
but it's still considered ultra marathon.
Yeah, it's still an ultra. I will tell the listening audience, there's a big difference between 50K and 50 mile. If you look at race results, most people in any kind of decent shape can finish a 50K. It's gonna be hard, a little painful, you're pretty tired. Not everybody can finish a 50 miler. I respect those people.
Yeah, there's a police officer in Radford who does 50 miles. I think even 100 miles. She's really good runner as
The
well.
100 is a new level. It's a new level of.
So what's the best part of your current job?
I'll tell you.
As I laugh, because you've had a plethora.
Yeah.
What is
A
the
plethora is
best
right.
thing about your current job
I'll
besides
tell you.
Patrick?
Well, I was going to say, even if he wasn't sitting in the back listening right now, I would say my coworkers. Patrick is awesome. I have a coworker named Carrie. She's really great to work with. Jill, and our boss Melanie is amazing, and she makes our jobs easy to come to every day. So I really enjoy the atmosphere I'm working in. I do miss police work and I miss teaching all the time, but I don't think I would change what I'm doing now. Ever.
Well, you still dabble in police work. You're still part-time.
I still get to do part-time at Dublin.
Maintain your police credentials and stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to obviously the highlight of the podcast, really the most interesting part, the law, right? So I had this thought that I do like a little series,
Right.
Most of our audience, I would hope, has never been arrested before. I hope everybody can avoid that. So people might have questions, and there's a lot to talk about, but I just want to hit some highlights. So the last time we talked about arresting people, without a warrant usually. So the other way is there's an arrest warrant issued. So we'll glance over that. So you get arrested, you go to the magistrate's office next, and then the magistrate decides, all right, you're going home tonight, you're going to jail, you have to put up some money. So let's talk about that. I mean, thrilling stuff. Virginia Code 19.2, 120, admission to bail. So first, prior to conducting any hearing on the issue of bail or release or detention, the official shall obtain the person's criminal history. So you go to the magistrate, or you can go to a judge. It's pretty unusual. And they can look at your criminal history, see what you've done in the past. Then, person who is held in custody pending trial or hearing for an offense, civil, criminal, or otherwise, shall be admitted to bail by the judicial officer unless there's probable cause to believe that he won't appear for trial or him being out constitutes an unreasonable danger to himself or the public. And that's defined in the code. So, interesting, you shall get bail unless there's reason to believe you're not going to show up or you're going to be a danger. So then there's goes into it a little further about secured bond, how you appeal and all that. But, when I've gone with people who have made some mistakes of criminal nature, things that I might talk to you about is, what reason is there to believe that you're going to come to trial? Do you have ties to the area? Do you have a steady job? Have you been here, been in trouble before? Do you ever had an issue with not showing up to court before? But otherwise, they'll admit you to bail. They might have you put up some money. They might have you sign, just promise you appear if you're
Personal recognizance.
recognizance. Yeah, if you've never been in trouble before, that kind of thing. And then, bonus fun fact here.
Bonus.
If you go see a bondsman, the bondsman can ask to see your criminal history from the magistrate. They just have to pay a $15 fee to the Virginia Literacy Fund. Fun fact of the day.
Little literacy.
Yep.
I got you.
So, good stuff. Stay tuned for the next step in the criminal process. We'll have to hit the highlights here. Swindling stuff.
So there's different ways to make bond. You can go through a bondsman, right? And I think you have to pay 10%. I think it is.
Normally.
And I think that can't they revoke a bond, the bondsman, for any reason at any time? Sometimes the bondsman.
Depends on what's going on in the situation. You definitely have to sign promising to abide by certain terms. You usually stay in the state, or maybe if I were to hurt you, I can't talk to you until trial. Stay away from you.
Could a person not go through a bondsman and use like a property, sign over property?
Sure. It depends on the bondsman, whatever they're willing. If they're willing to work with you,
And can you do a cash bond? I mean, can people actually just pay a fee in order to get out?
Yeah, depends again on the bondsman, but it just has to go to the magistrate, to the court system, and all that. Depends on the crime. But if you want to avoid that, don't do any crime.
I wonder if how many states have this process, because every state's different. Like we're a Commonwealth, right? So we do things a little differently than other states.
The Commonwealth of Virginia. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure whatever we do here is the best.
Some states do not have a magistrate system.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. Never worked outside the state.